Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu makes a rare public trip to Europe, paving the way for closer ties. Captain America becomes the latest victim of Hong Kong's controversial national security law. Can Joe Biden's attendance at the ASEAN summit help the Myanmar crisis? And the bulk EV order that pushed Tesla past $1 trillion in market value. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan's foreign minister has arrived in Central Europe in a landmark trip that is breaking with convention. Joseph Wu is visiting Slovakia and the Czech Republic, countries with which Taiwan has no official diplomatic relations. Such visits are usually conducted privately or only made public when over. In Slovakia, the minister will address a conference hosted by a local think tank. In the Czech Republic, Senate President Miloš Vystrčil will present Wu with a medal. In a tweet, Wu said Taiwan shares the values of freedom, human rights and the rule of law with the two Central European countries. China has warned Slovakia and the Czech Republic against building closer ties with Taiwan. But the Czech Senate President says his country has the right to support other democracies.
My jsme přesvědčeni, že rozvojem spolupráce s Taiwanem jednak nic neporušujeme, jednak potvrzujeme svoji svébytnost, suverenitu a samostatnost a jednak napomáháme tomu, abychom v České republice fungovali způsobem, který je pro nás výhodný. A to si myslím, že je naše povinnost, protože naší povinností je se chovat tak, abychom zůstali svobodní, abychom podporovali demokracie na jiných místech světa.
To find out more about Taiwan's relationship with Slovakia, our reporter Betty Chen spoke to Miriam Lexman, a Slovakian member of the European Parliament.
All the countries you have mentioned are practically countries with a communist past, and I believe that this is the reason why these countries feel solidarity with Taiwan and also feel the importance to differ from the cooperation with China and try to build an economic and as well as genuine good diplomatic relations and cooperation on democracy support and defense and security in defense and security area with the democratic part of the world. I think this is absolutely vital. I think we understand that enlarging cooperation with the Chinese Communist Party would bring risks to even our economies.
So you talk about the risk. So now these countries are trying to deepen relations with Taiwan. So how will closer EU-Taiwan relations impact the EU's relations with China? And will the EU be concerned that by supporting Taiwan, the EU's economic ties with China will be sacrificed?
During the pandemics, we have seen that our economic dependency from China brings high risks, and we are very grateful that Taiwan has donated health assistance to countries. For example, Slovakia has received about 700,000 face masks from Taiwan. We have now responded, Slovakia has now responded by donating Taiwan vaccinations. And I believe this is the kind of cooperation democratic states should extend, should deepen, because this is exactly how we can not only safeguard our economic interests, but also our security interests.
The second trial under Hong Kong's national security law has resulted in another guilty verdict. Dubbed Captain America for the shield he carried at protests, Ma Chun-man has been found guilty of incitement to secession. The charges relate to the slogans he chanted, the placards he carried, and interviews he gave with the media. It's the first trial under the law that's related purely to political speech. The 31-year-old former food delivery man now faces up to 7 years in prison. Taiwan Plus's reporter Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick asked Eric Lai, Hong Kong law fellow at Georgetown University, what makes this case so exceptional.
He was the second defendant, but his case was the first case that only involves pure speech in public sites. So in a way, it's the first national security trials that involves a pure speech crime. And this is also a very disturbing case because in the court, it was the first time the defendants tried to bring human rights arguments and human rights defense before the court, before the judge. But sadly, in its verdict, the court dismissed it and ignored almost all the key elements of human rights protections under national security regimes.
Hong Kong is a signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Johannesburg Principles on Free Expression. But do you think that this kind of trial, this conviction, is consistent with those obligations and those principles?
The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights is still applicable in Hong Kong, according to Article 39 of the Basic Law, as well as Articles 4 and 5 of the National Security Law. However, in the first two verdicts, including the current verdict against Ma Chun-man, we can see the court did not make a consistent rationale and reasoning by safeguarding national security as well as safeguarding the basic rights and freedoms of individuals in Hong Kong. And according to the international human rights standard, any restrictions on free expressions must be narrowed and precise, and such restrictions shall be aimed at preventing a particular or specific threat to national security. But in the national security law of Hong Kong, as well as the verdicts yesterday, we couldn't see the court make any claims that the behaviors and actions of the defendants was particularly threatening national security in Hong Kong. And the national security offenses in the new law seems to be too vague and ambiguous, that anyone who simply make a political speech which is unfavorable by the government can simply fall into incitement now.
Amnesty International says it's closing its offices in Hong Kong following the imposition of the territory's national security law. The rights group says the law, which was introduced by China last year, makes it effectively impossible to continue its work. Regional operations will be moved to Amnesty's other offices in the Asia Pacific. Hong Kong's national security law criminalizes a range of behavior, including secession, subversion, terrorism and collusion with foreign forces. Critics say the law is overly broad and is being abused to stifle dissent. Beijing argues the law is necessary to maintain stability. US President Joe Biden will attend a virtual summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. It's the first time in 4 years that Washington is taking part in an ASEAN summit. It comes as Biden is ramping up engagement with regional allies to counter China. Not invited, however, is Myanmar's military leader Min Aung Hlaing, who overthrew the civilian government in a February coup. The exclusion is a rare move for the 10-member ASEAN bloc, which typically does not interfere with the internal affairs of its member states. Ahead of the summit, US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with representatives of Myanmar's National Unity Government, set up by opponents of army rule, including ousted lawmakers. TaiwanPlus reporter Rick Glauert spoke to Manning Mao from Human Rights Watch about whether this week's summit can help address the current crisis. He began by asking about the significance of Biden's attendance.
It's hugely significant that the US president is attending. Generally speaking, ASEAN is very closed. They're very focused on regional partnership, but it goes to show that international pressure is key to what's happening in Myanmar right now. So the US has been very vocal, has been one of the countries that have really led the way in terms of sanctioning individuals and senior military officials who are responsible for the coup. Inviting someone like Biden really sends a note to the military because there is a certain shift or pressure away from negotiating with the military now to finally recognizing the National Unity Government as the government of Myanmar, which is what the people of Myanmar would prefer.
And could you tell us a little bit more about the situation on the ground in Myanmar right now?
It's fair to say that the country has really descended into some sort of chaotic pattern. And I say pattern because there are ebbs and flows where maybe, it's quiet, there's not as much violence or even violence between the militia groups and the military. People can then go out and do their banking or shopping in the markets, but then the power gets cut out, there's no water, there's explosions going off, and they have to regroup again. In the world, in 2021 so far, of the total number of people who've been killed in protests, 60% of those people are from Myanmar. So it's very difficult for people to continue the momentum of protesting and going out and being vocal when they're being attacked by the state in this way. And people are really struggling. The World Food Programme has already said that 1 in 4 people are going hungry. There's a lot of internally displaced peoples. So the UN again said something like a total of 3 million people are displaced internally.
So what should ASEAN be doing?
What we need to see from ASEAN is actually penalties. So we need to see them impose penalties on the Myanmar military for not holding up their end of the bargain, not meeting the stipulations in the 5-point consensus plan, and not actually coming to the table in a meaningful way to have meaningful dialogue to settle the situation once and for all. What we've seen in the past is ASEAN make sweeping statements and then acquiesce to the military. And we really need to ensure that this time around, Min Aung Hlaing, the senior generals who are responsible for this coup, are going to be punished and held accountable. And one of the first things that starts is also from countries recommending that the country's situation is referred to the International Criminal Court. And ASEAN should be leading on this as well. So I really hope that if the US is at the table, some of these issues are discussed, and the key thing will be accountability.
Coming up after the break, we meet the people charged with protecting some of Taiwan's and the world's most cherished objects. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu has arrived in Central Europe in a landmark trip that is breaking with convention on several levels. Taiwan's government is again extending the country's level 2 COVID-19 restrictions. That's despite bringing community transmission of the virus under control. Health Minister Sun Tzu-zong announced the decision without saying how long the extension would be. It has been in effect since July 27th. Meanwhile, the government's COVID task force says it wants 60% of Taiwan's population to be fully vaccinated before the country's borders can reopen. To date, around 2/3 of Taiwan's population have received one dose of a COVID vaccine, but only 27% are fully vaccinated. Taiwan has also completed its own digital COVID-19 vaccination recognition system. However, the launch of the program is not confirmed. In the US, they have announced the details of its new international air travel policies. The rules require COVID-19 vaccinations for the vast majority of incoming foreign visitors. Starting from November 8th, all adult visitors will need to be fully vaccinated except for those with a valid exception. Vaccinated passengers must also provide proof of a negative COVID test taken within 3 days of travel. Children will not be required to be fully vaccinated, but those aged 2 and above must still present a negative COVID test. Electric car maker Tesla surpassed a market value of $1 trillion on Monday following a deal with car rental company Hertz. The surge in value reportedly came as a surprise to CEO Elon Musk, even though demand for electric vehicles appears to be surging. Jaime Ocon has the story.
Electric vehicle maker Tesla surpassed $1 trillion in market value after landing its biggest ever order from rental car company Hertz. The news prompted a celebratory tweet from Tesla CEO Elon Musk and made Tesla the first auto company to gain trillion-dollar status, along with Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google owner Alphabet. The deal with Hertz underscores the growing popularity of electric cars globally. In fact, in Europe, Tesla's Model 3 topped monthly sales of new cars in September, according to data from research firm Jado Dynamics, a first-time first place for an electric car. Earlier this month, at the launch of a large-scale battery factory near Berlin, Elon Musk reiterated Tesla's ambition to top the entire auto industry in sales over the next decade.
What this factory is about is creating high-volume, affordable electric cars, and hopefully also battery packs, maybe solar, and but generally the overarching goal is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy.
That transition to sustainable energy is evident closer to home too. In Taiwan, electric scooter maker Gogoro recently announced the deployment of its battery swapping technology in China. It's also reportedly exploring the Indonesian market. As countries around the world grapple with energy and climate concerns, perhaps the growing demand for electric vehicles is a drive in the right direction. Chris Ma and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
The UN Weather Agency said on Monday that greenhouse gas levels hit a record high last year, warning that the world was way off track in meeting its climate goals. The report showed that carbon dioxide levels surged in 2020, rising more than the average rate over the last decade. That's despite a temporary dip in emissions during COVID-19 lockdowns. Officials warn that the world is heading toward a temperature increase of 2.5 to 3 degrees Celsius, far above the target of 1.5 to 2 degrees set by world leaders at the Paris Climate Summit in 2016. The report comes just days before the start of the COP26 Global Climate Conference in the UK. An unusual visitor has been spotted along Taiwan's northern coast, a baby seal. Seals are not usually seen around Taiwan as they prefer colder waters. Government workers tried to capture the animal for its protection, but the seal got away. It's unknown how the seal arrived at the fishing port of Bito. It is believed that the infant got separated from its mother and was carried away by ocean currents. Experts say there is a chance the seal was smuggled into Taiwan or was abandoned by a private marine institution. Taiwan's National Palace Museum is home to one of the world's largest collections of artifacts from history. Watching over these treasures is a group of dedicated conservators whose skills are passed down from generation to generation.
做一个东西，尤其是这种历史的东西、古物的东西出来之后，你会有一种成就感。外面的只是看到它完整的一面，但是幕后我们在做的，对待这些文物真的是不一样，把它当成是自己的生命一样。 当时进来的时候，民国50几、60几年代的时候，大部分都是师徒制。那我学的就是文献呐、清宫档案呐、清史稿这一类，还有那个三本古籍。像这个重蛀的很严重，那为什么我们用补的呢？因为脱表的话，它会增加它的厚度，原本的它都装不下去了，所以我们就用补洞的。以前古时候留下来的。 我们先要拆他的书，看他怎么装，才有办法把它恢复原状。前人应该很有脑袋，很聪明的，他会想到说后面的人将来好修。他这个修又不是永远的，他也会有损坏的一天嘛。修这种东西不是死的东西，非得要这样修不可，因为年代在变，以前的古法修法跟我们现在又不一样。 我现在修跟我师父一样，我们修的那种心态就是说，我现在修的也要留给后面的人，将来好修好拆。
二长修的上爱切，
量嘛上多啊。台北你像繁华社会嘛。 有些时候就会出去跟同事出去玩，那时候师父对我有一点很失望。师父后来看见我当面会有个改变，所以师父就会继续教我。但是那时候我就在想，既然师父这样教我，有心要教的话，我们就有心要学，所以我会继续在这一门继续学，也是有这个因素了。
学这个要时间的磨练，其实工序上说起来是。 不是很多，可是一定要经过时间的历练，他才会感受到。
我刚开始的时候，我会想说这些文物留着干什么？后来想想，师父说这些都是有历史价值。前人常说了，古物有灵啊。那我们就把这个古物，把它比喻作一个年迈体弱，跟人一样对待。 因为文物看那么多哈，有些时候看它那么破，有些真的很不舍，真的会有这种想法，真的是碰到文物之后，他的想法会比较深刻。以我来讲的话，包括故宫里面的修复师，应该他要善待文物，把破损或者是说实物经验，或者是他的技术，那以最好的把它记录下来，这是一个经验，然后传给后人。 这都是我们每天有在想的这种使命感呐。
修旧如旧，要展现原来的样貌。比如说它坏的地方，给它修补好了，可是要给后来的人知道，这个是后人修补的。 我的生命完全就是能够进入故宫，修复这些文物。如果我
现在想的话，想以往的16岁会让我变成这个样子，我还是会回来这个地方。
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We leave you with some images of the annual Beard Olympics with over 100 proud mustachio and beard wearers in southeast Germany. Check out the TaiwanPlus News app, YouTube and website for this show and more. Stay safe and see you next time.